Hey everybody, welcome back to 5 disturbing, creepy, paranormal, and just spine-chilling stories that I find and narrate on Reddit. If you enjoy this kind of content, please don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps with my channel. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Without further ado, here are the stories. I'm a fairly recently divorced 49-year-old female who decided to try out some dating apps. I went on a few dates with mixed results, however, this one really freaked me out. I matched with a 50-year-old male. We texted, spoke on the phone briefly, and made plans for a lunch date. The restaurant was in a well-populated, busy area. He got there a few minutes before me and was sloppily chowing down on chips and salsa as I walked up. As soon as I sat down, he gave me a creepy smile. His eyes widened and he said, "Oh." It made me uncomfortable, which was red flag number 1. I should have listened to my gut and left then. He had a drink in front of him and immediately asked if I wanted a margarita. When I told him I didn't drink, he seemed very disappointed. He rudely asks the waiter for another drink, which is red flag number 2, being rude and disrespectful to waitstaff. We start talking about jobs, family, hobbies, etc. When I mention that I used to be a social worker, he gets an angry and accusatory look on his face and says, "Well, my daughter's in jail," red flag number 3. I don't know how to react and say, "I'm sorry to hear that." His face immediately changes. He smiles and says, "That's okay," red flag number 4. He continues to order 2 more drinks while being rude to the waitstaff and making a comment about how they probably don't speak English. As the date is coming to an end, he tells me he wants to see me again. I told him that I didn't feel like we clicked and I wasn't interested. He continues to insist, despite my protests, and says he can take me out on his boat, which is red flag number 5. I told him that it appears that he doesn't hear the word no too often. He gets aggravated. We pay, leave, and walk out. We are now on the sidewalk, and as I say goodbye, he leans over to kiss me. I hold my hand up and tell him that I'm not interested. He angrily looks at me in the eyes and says, "No, you are going to kiss me." Just a disclaimer, he is 10 inches taller than me and outweighs me by at least 75 pounds. I start walking away. He grabs my shoulder. I pull away and say, "What the F, leave me alone," and jump in my car, which is parked close to the front of the restaurant. My head was spinning. I pulled out and looked in my rearview mirror and noticed he's getting into his car. It was parked behind me. The whole way home, I was looking in my mirror to make sure he wasn't following me. He wasn't. All I could think of was that if he was willing to behave that way on a busy street, in broad daylight, what would he act like if we were alone, or in a more secluded area, or on his boat? I immediately deleted him and reported him on the app. I'm on mobile, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes I didn't catch. I will fix it when I get off of work later. The Ring video is linked at the bottom. I don't think I'm breaking any rules by sharing this footage, but please delete it if so. I shared my Ring doorbell with my buddy who asked me if I had ever watched the doorbell messages she had left for me. I have never thought about looking at who's rang my doorbell for some reason. I don't take those features seriously. So I flipped through the recorded videos, not expecting to see anything other than my friends as they come inside. My roommates and I also sometimes do an outfit check on the doorbell, and I'd also probably see evidence of how often I use DoorDash. Let me just say first, I was confused as to why he wouldn't just ask what he needed to ask me while I'm in public outside, and in a more normal place to approach someone, rather than obviously overstep a boundary and make me question whether or not I'm safe when I walk down the street with my dogs, or if I genuinely need to be looking over my shoulder. I have no clue who this is, or what he could want, but here are the creepy videos in question. I went back and looked at my Ring notification history just to see right before he rings my doorbell and what came after. What came immediately before, and I mean within the minute, was me finishing my walk with one of my dogs. Once I get inside my building, which is a big house that has an unlocked door during the day, so that's why I didn't lock it behind me, it was roughly a minute for him to come inside immediately after me. Each time, I've never seen this man before, and I had no idea anyone had ever followed me inside or tried to get me to come to the door for whatever reason more than once. I literally do not know anything, so for what it's worth, I kind of feel like maybe I'm being stalked. Is it weird of me to think that it maybe does have something to do with my dogs? That might sound stupid, but they are a really interesting breed. I've heard of people stealing animals, I just don't know what to think of the entire situation. There really isn't much I can do besides let my landlord know and he'll just tell me to call the police, in which case I wouldn't even know what to say. To the man leaving weird ass cryptic shit on my ring, please, let's definitely not meet. An AskReddit thread. What is the creepiest, most unexplainable thing you have ever experienced? Orange Kid commented, my house sitting story. 2 months after my brother and his wife bought a new house, they had to go out of town and needed their cats fed. Their house and my office are both a good drive from my apartment, but only a few minutes away from each other. My brother said if I wanted, I could just stay over in the guest room rather than driving among the 3 places. So I got the keys and instructions, and I was staying there 3 nights, Monday to Wednesday. Monday evening was uneventful until about midnight. I was lying on the living room couch watching Conan with a cat lying on my chest. I started to drift off to sleep. The next thing I knew, I was standing in pitch black darkness. I completely freaked out. I had no idea where I was. I felt around in the dark and felt nothing. Finally, I realized there was actually a faint blue light coming from above. I moved towards it and then understood where I was. I was in the fucking basement. The light was coming through the basement door at the top of the stairs, which leads to the kitchen. Just enough moonlight apparently made it through from a window elsewhere in the kitchen. I bolted up the stairs, turned on the kitchen light, and closed the basement door. I was terrified until I calmed down enough to come to the conclusion you probably already came to. I had sleepwalked all the way down the stairs after opening the basement door, which I know was closed. A couple things are important to the story. First, the basement. The house was very nice, actually more than they should have been able to afford. The only exception was the basement. I had only seen the basement once, when I first got the tour. It was totally unfinished and was the one major thing they wanted to fix up. All they had down there was some boxes and the washer/dryer. I had no reason to want to go down there, and had kind of forgotten it existed. The other point is that sleepwalking is kind of a thing in my family, almost an inside joke. My brother talked in his sleep constantly and would sleepwalk sometimes, and it always scared the hell out of me. The idea of people doing things in their sleep just creeps me out to the core, and still does. My brother knew this and would tease me about it, so it was known in my family that I had this phobia. But as far as I know, I had never ever sleepwalked until that night. The image kept playing in my mind over and over, of me asleep, getting up from the couch, walking to the kitchen, opening the basement door, and shuffling down the stairs into total darkness. Creepy as hell. Anyway, I saw the TV was still on in the living room playing Wedding Crashers. I watched the rest of the movie, trying to laugh and think of the sleepwalking as a funny story to tell my brother. When I went upstairs to go sleep in the guest room, I stayed asleep. That was night 1. The next morning, in the light of day, it didn't seem that scary. I texted my brother about it and joked around. All day, I wasn't bothered one bit, but as I'm walking out of my office to my car, I'm overcome with a sense of dread. All of a sudden, the thought of going to sleep in that house and maybe sleepwalking again is scaring me. So I had a plan. I stop at the hardware store and pick up one of those rubber door stopper wedges. At the house, I jam this into the crack under the basement door and kick it in until it's as far as it can go. I test it out, trying to open the door, and it won't budge. Perfect. Later, I go upstairs and fall asleep. When I wake up, I swear to God I think I'm dreaming. I was standing in darkness again, but this time I know exactly where I am. The smell is the same. The concrete floor under my feet is the same. I look around for a light from upstairs and it takes me longer to find it because it's further away. Last night, I was only a couple of feet from the stairs. This night, it was maybe 10 feet. I run up and turn on the kitchen lights. I see the rubber wedge on the floor a couple feet away, as if tossed there. Again, I can't stop picturing myself sleepwalking. Out of the bedroom, down the stairs, trying to open the basement door, bending down and yanking out the wedge, and then again, slowly down into the darkness. I decided I was turning on the basement lights and they were staying on. I opened the door and flipped the switch to the basement stairway. I saw there was a main switch at the bottom of the stairs. To give you a quick sense of the layout, the staircase splits the basement into 2 parts. To the right is a small area with a washer/dryer, and to the left is a big open area. Anyway, I walked down and turned on the lights for the whole basement. That's when I noticed something I hadn't noticed when my brother gave me the tour. About 10 to 15 feet away, in the big area, there was a door to what looked like a small closet. This door was closed, but had no doorknob, just an empty hole. So it looked like it would freely swing open. I realized it was very close to where I had just awoken. Then a fucking freaky thought came to me. It was as if each night I was heading to the door, and getting a little farther each time before I woke up. As soon as that thought popped into my head, I booked it up the stairs again, left the lights on, and closed the door. I went up to the bedroom, but it took me forever to fall asleep. That was night 2. The next morning, Wednesday morning, I woke up late for work. I didn't think about the basement at all because I was scrambling to get ready. At work though, I was still curious about what was behind that door. So I texted my brother and asked. He replied, "Wait, why were you in the basement?" I realized that when I texted him the day before, I never actually told him where I woke up. So I tell him I woke up in the basement, actually twice in a row. After a while, he sends this novel-length text about how the basement is creepy, not to go down there, etc. How they tried putting the litter boxes in the basement and the cats made a mess in the house because they refused to go down there. About how he volunteers to do every chore other than the laundry so he doesn't have to go down there. He says all this stuff, and it's surprising to me because my brother never believed in the paranormal or superstitions, ever since we were kids. I also realized he never answered my question about the door, but I let it go. After work, I get the same feeling of dread as I'm walking to my car. I really don't want to stay there again, and I decide, fuck it, I don't have to. So I go feed the cats, get my stuff, and drive back to my place. I'm supposed to feed the cats one more time, so I'll stop over in the morning. As I went to sleep at my apartment, I was thinking of all the steps I would have to take to sleepwalk to the basement again. Find my car parked around the block, drive asleep to my brother's house, etc. But this time, I sleep through the night. That was night 3. Thursday morning, I stop at the house as planned. I'm about to leave when I remember that the basement lights are still on. I don't even hesitate to go down to turn them off. There was something about being there in the morning that, at the time, made it seem fine. When I go down again, that door without a doorknob catches my eye. And it also doesn't seem scary anymore. So what the hell, let's see. I walk over to it and I distinctly remember not feeling spooked at all, until I reach my hand towards the doorknob hole to pull it open. As soon as I do that, and I mean instantly, I feel this electric feeling, like the air before a storm, and I imagine a hand coming through that hole and grabbing mine. It was like 0 to 60, going from no fear to being certain that something horrible would happen if I opened that door. It's hard to describe it other than that electric feeling. I booked it up the stairs and out of the house. So, a month later, I meet my brother for happy hour. A few drinks in, we start joking about me sleepwalking and the creepy basement. I say he never answered me about what's behind the door, and he says I don't want to know. Joking at first, but then insisting. Finally, he tells me, and I don't believe him. He's my big brother and has only bullshitted me about 1,000,000 times in my life. This was his explanation. The previous and first owners of the house had a teen daughter that used the basement as her bedroom. The door was to her closet, where one night she curled up, took some pills, and killed herself. The family was going to remodel the basement, but after tearing it apart realized they couldn't do it and had to move. That was why only the basement was unfinished, and why my brother was able to afford the place. The seller had to disclose a suicide had happened in the residence. He said if I didn't believe him, look up the market values of the identical houses in his track. I know how much they paid for their house and it was way lower. He and his wife considered themselves rational people and figured it was a bargain, but didn't want to tell anyone. After they moved in, his wife was fine with the basement, but he grew to hate it. He apologized for not saying anything to me before I stayed there, but he never thought I'd have any reason to go down there. Now here's what really convinced me. I said, okay, the only thing that makes me kind of believe you is that the last morning I was there, I went over to the closet door, and at this point I see my brother's face changing. And I continued, when I went to open it, the air felt like, and at the exact same instant I say electricity and my brother says electric, at the same exact time. I saw his face and knew he was telling the truth. I've never stepped foot again in that basement, and I haven't sleepwalked since. This happened 5 years ago, and I'm only posting now because I want to warn others. This is quite difficult to talk about, for reasons that will become clear. In 2017, I went to a friend's birthday party. It was their 40th, so it was a pretty big deal. I had recently lost my job and I was struggling with my mental health, but I had a very supportive husband and a good family life. And it was a private party. What could go wrong? My husband was supposed to go with me, but our childcare arrangements fell through at the last moment. I didn't want to go without my husband, but he felt I needed a night out with friends, and the birthday girl kept asking if I was coming. So I went. It was a private party and everyone there had been invited by the birthday girl. There was half a dozen people I knew really well. Everyone else was a stranger, but I assumed that the birthday girl had good judgment and everyone present was okay. We were all having a great time, laughing and dancing. At one point I stepped outside to cool down and smoke a cigarette. A fellow partygoer, a male, joined me. We talked about the birthday girl, how we knew her, and we talked about football. It turned out we were from the same city and supported the same team. He returned to the party and asked me if I wanted a drink. I said no and raised my glass to show him I already had one. I then put my drink down and went to dance with the birthday girl. When I returned from the dance floor, I took a big gulp of my drink, and after that, it all gets a little hazy. The rest of the story is pieced together from various sources and photos. There is a photo of the male party guest, we'll call him MPG, and me with the venue's door staff. I'm smiling at the camera with my arm around the security man and the MPG next to me, kissing my cheek. I don't remember this. There is a photo of me and MPG. I am leaning against him with my eyes closed. I don't remember this. I woke up the next morning at home, on the sofa. My husband was initially furious about the state that I came home in, but he didn't know how bad it could have been. Apparently, several friends saw the MPG trying to guide me into a waiting car and stopped him. When they challenged him, he said I had agreed to leave with him, but I was incoherent at this point. I have no recollection of this, by the way. A female friend took me home. I don't remember this, but I know my friend saved me from something horrible. Once my husband knew what had happened, he was very supportive and concerned. My female friend told my husband how quickly my behavior had changed and how quickly I had become uncoordinated and incoherent. This all took place 5 years ago. I saw the birthday girl recently and she told me that MPG is currently in prison for assaulting his girlfriend in 2020. Please remember, always be careful with your drink. Never leave it unattended. Watch out for your friends and make sure they are watching out for you. When I, a 20-year-old female, was around 11 or 12, I would hang out at the park across the street from my house with friends. It's not a super popular park or anything, more just the neighborhood/side streets nearby, but it's a proper playground. A friend and I were there more towards the evening, maybe like 4 or 5 p.m, sitting at the top of the playground looking up at the sky. We hear someone walking on the path nearby and turn to look. There's this decent height, thin dude in a hoodie walking our way. Mind you, we're now the only 3 people in the park. We stay where we are because we figure, the guy must be walking the path through the park, past the playground and out the other end. Nope. Guy comes off the path and starts walking across the wood chips over to the playground. At that point we get up, kinda chuckle and just shift around nervously. He slowly starts climbing the stairs. Dead-ass eye contact the entire time. This is where we're really nervous. Us being at the top of the playground, we go down the big slide, start walking around the side back to the bottom to see if this guy's actually following us, or maybe it's just some dude wanting the playground. Guy goes up, comes down, walks around the side. Now, we took like the longest way around, weaved a bit. This guy does the exact same. At this point, he seems to be speeding up to catch up to us. My friend and I look at each other and we just book it the fuck out of there. Guy starts running after us until he sees we're running to a house, which is mine, immediately turns around and beelines it out of the park from where he came. This is probably the closest I've ever been to someone potentially trying to kidnap me, or someone with me. Definitely not the only close creep encounter I've had as a kid though. Thank God this park is so close to houses. Thank you so much for watching or listening or just being here. I hope that you enjoyed the stories, and please let me know what your thoughts and opinions are in the comment section down below. I'll see you next week for some more spooky content.